We now welcome on to the Gridiron Show the ever excellent Super Bowl winning head coach with the Baltimore Ravens, Coach Brian Billick. Coach Billick, how are we doing, sir?
Doing great. Well, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Very well indeed. And as always, Coach joins us in association with X-Tech Pads. Check out their wares online because they are the very best in game day pads and used by just so many top names in the NFL. So well worth your time and checking out. We're going to have a little bit of fun and do a bit of a mid-season awards with you today, Coach. But before we do so, there was a couple of plays this week I did want to get your thoughts on. I think you can guess that one of them is the Hail Murray, as we're now calling it, thanks to Mike Tirico. Interesting that afterwards, in his post-game press conference, Kyler Murray kind of described the play itself as a shambles and was saying kind of the fact that they only sent DeAndre Hopkins deep and the other three receivers, none of them went to the end zone, and yet somehow it all came together.
Yeah, typically on a Hail Mary, you send three down, a jumper in the middle, someone behind, and someone in front. That's normally how you orchestrate it. So if the ball gets tipped, which it typically does, you have someone in position. They took the tack of going, okay, we're gonna Michael Jordan it. We're gonna clear out the key. Okay. And we're going to just send D Hopkins down there and let him go up. And it was spectacular. I mean, you're talking about three, but there were six hands on it by the Buffalo Bills, and DeAndre Hopkins comes down with it. It was just a spectacular play. And it was interesting that Murray, and you could understand because that was the design. He said, all I saw was Hopkins. They said, God, I can't believe there was all those Buffalo guys. He goes, I didn't even see them. All I saw was D Hopkins. That's why I threw it. And on a Hail Mary, that's what it is. Take a shot. What the worst that could happen? What, an interception? And it's just a magnificent play.
Was there the element of the play call? Because like I say, I thought it was interesting that he did mention that he thought it was a shambles, particularly as they had the timeout as well. It just seemed an odd thing for the quarterback to be not just coming in there and going, whoa, we did it, don't worry about it, but actually saying, yeah, I didn't like the play call, but we managed to pull it off somehow.
The hardest part in executing Hail Mary is getting the quarterback enough time for everybody to get down 50, 60 yards down the field. And he obviously bought time, as he typically does, by getting outside the pocket. So that gave Hopkins plenty of time to get situated and get down the field. So it's not like it's a well-orchestrated design play. I mean, there's structure to it, but it is a little helter-skelter. I mean, my God, it's the Hail Mary last gasp play of a game. So it's going to feel that way. And as typical, it comes down to just the extraordinary talents of an individual like DeAndre Hopkins.
Incredible implications as well, which we discussed on the show already. I also wanted to, it was funny because we had another player talking play calling in his press conference today, Keenan Allen, off the back of the Dolphins game where the Chargers, again, another one-score loss for them, talked about the offense being pretty confused out there, talked about having to run the ball to avoid catastrophic plays. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of that is the Dolphins defense, but it does feel like it's just not clicking in Los Angeles.
No, and Johnny Lynn, the head coach, has got a problem because, and this is typical, it happens as a team struggles with a coach who's probably on a bubble. And it's unfortunate because they're wasting an incredible rookie year by Herbert, who's having just an unbelievable year. But as we've talked about before, this is a team that just seems to find a way to lose in the last few minutes of a game. What's 7 or 8 of them now? That it starts to cascade downhill, and you have the players beginning to. The hardest part for Johnny Lynn is it's the players. The minute something bad happens, it's okay. Here we go again. That okay, we've been down here before. They lose faith in the coaching staff. Coaching staff lose faith in the players. It's just not a healthy situation. I think you're seeing Keenan Allen, which regrettably, it's hard for me to listen to as a coach because it's okay. Well, what's your purpose here? It's the typical jump up on the soapbox and say, I confess he did it, mentality, which is not a healthy place to be.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you're a losing team. That kind of those excuses start to fly. And actually, I like the fact that we get somewhere like what we've seen. I mean, Seattle have had a really rough 3 or 4 weeks. Baltimore off the back of that Patriots loss now fall a few games back. But we didn't hear any of that from in those locker rooms. And I guess that's what you want as a coach is right. It's rough, but let's keep it rough in house.
Yeah, and two points to make. And you brought up two excellent teams. One, both championship pedigrees, so they know what it is to win a championship. Two coaches that are solidly in place. Obviously, regardless of how the season ends, John Harbaugh and Pete Carroll aren't going anywhere, and the players know that, and they know, okay, I'm responsible to this guy next year if I want to be on this team. I think what you see on a team that's struggling and there's a potential coaching change is the players recognizing, well, this guy's probably going to be gone anyway, so I'm just going to find cover for myself.
Make sure that when the next guy comes in, it's not you that's looked bad off the back of it, even though I sometimes tend to think that that's a worse approach to take as a player, maybe. But you mentioned Justin Herbert. I do wonder on that conversation. We've seen Tua Tagovailoa come in, 3 wins from 3, up and down from a personal performance, but they're getting it done. Justin Herbert, very much the opposite of that. And then Joe Burrow, who's ticking along, but not getting a lot of wins in Cincinnati. What have you made of the 3 kind of key rookie quarterbacks, and looking at what you've seen from them between 3 and kind of 8-9 games into their careers? Who do you like? Where do you think they're going to be?
Well, you got to like them all. I mean, I'm doing a podcast and a bit on NFL Network tonight with Michael Robinson about these athletic quarterbacks and what it really means. Is the game really changing? And when you look at their numbers, I'm like, my God, Murray's he's already on pace to be the only quarterback in the history of the league to throw for more than 4,000 yards and run for more than 1,000. That's and on better than 700 touches. That's really the thing right now people are looking at. Is that the future? Can your quarterback survive when you have Lamar Jackson, is the same way. He's close to 600 touches. When I say touches, I mean throws and runs. So when you're talking about quarterbacks getting up to that 150 and 160 runs, Murray's on pace to be 155. Jackson's on pace for 160, down a little bit from his 176 last year. Even a Josh Allen is on pace to be above 100 touches. So we'll have to see. One, is it sustainable? That's always the concern. Is a quarterback going to be more vulnerable to injury? And that's the old school thinking that I think we're beginning to go through change a little bit. But these guys are so productive. And you look, Josh Allen's the same way. He's better than 4,500 yards, better than 115 runs. Burrow is really impressive. He's on pace to throw better than 650 times. That's a lot for a rookie quarterback, surrounded by a bad team. But the good news is you learn a lot. I mean, the growth curve for him is going to be accelerated compared to Lamar Jackson, who will throw very little more than 400 throws again this year. And that's fine because they do other things and they run. But the growth curve for Lamar Jackson, and he has struggled showing he can be that guy from the pocket compared to Burrow, who, is throwing the ball darn near every down, but is learning a lot from it.
It's worth checking out, by the way. Coach Billick's excellent. The Q Factor, the elusive search for the next great NFL quarterback. I got my copy. I really should have it to hand to be able to kind of show up to the camera or something, but I've started to dig into it, and it's a really good read, particularly if you're a nice football nerd like myself. It's definitely going to be worth checking out for you. I said we were going to do some mid-season awards. Let's start off with do any of those guys kind of qualify for your Rookie of the Year so far? Is there anyone else who's really stood out for you?
Well, naturally, because of the numbers, you go to guys like Herbert or Burrow, even though they're not on winning teams, and they have been spectacular, and they're both high draft choices. So obviously, that one's kind of a low-hanging fruit in terms of what they've been able to do. The wide receiver Justin Jefferson, yeah. Yeah, I think is one that's been, if you're looking for a guy that was kind of off the radar and not a top pick and that type of thing, it would be an interesting choice.
What about coaching at this point in the year? I think there's some interesting choices out there, some people who are stepping up to the mark. Who do you think is in the running for that award at this stage?
Well, we tend to dismiss them, but you go to the top with Andy Reid and because that'd be easy and the success they're having. But yeah, they get it all the time, and that was expected. That's kind of the mentality. Belichick for years has kind of fallen into that category. I think Sean McDermott in Buffalo is with developing that team, bringing the defense along. Obviously, a young quarterback now in the new AFC East post, New England Patriot dominance. I also think Brian Flores down in Miami, that they even though Tua is now just getting into his own, and we've got a lot left to play to see just how good he's going to be, that defense is really developed. And they're winning some games. Now, whether they're even going to make the playoffs or whether they can win a championship, that's hard to say. But I think those two in particular noteworthy in terms of the way they're growing their franchises, and that these guys could be, on top of some pretty good teams by year's end.
Regular listeners will know I love a bit of confirmation bias. So I love those choices, because I started the season by saying my coach of the year pick was whoever wins the AFC East over the New England Patriots. So there we go. And actually those two face each other in week 17. That could end up being Sunday night football. Yeah. Who'd have thought? Bills, Dolphins for all the marbles. Even a year ago, we wouldn't necessarily expected that. What about MVP? Because it's become an interesting conversation after we talked about it, the recent struggles for Seattle, and Russell Wilson seemed to be so far ahead.
But now, and keep in mind that those struggles still means Russell Wilson is on pace for almost 600 throws, 70% completion, almost 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. Those numbers are hard to defy. But we already talked about Kyler Murray, record-setting 4,000 plus passing yards probably, and over 1,000 yards rushing. So I think those two. I think there's Wilson is an emotional favorite, because he should have had an MVP last year, but Lamar Jackson had that incredible year. There always to be somebody else, the new shiny object that we kind of go to, and Russell Wilson keeps putting together. So if they can kind of get their defense rectified a little bit and end up being a playoff team, with those numbers, Russell Wilson might just fall into that category.
Coach, it's always an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you taking the time. I look forward to hearing you and Mike Robb breaking down the quarterbacks later today, and we'll speak again soon.
Sounds great.